My name is David Neblett. I'm a founding partner at Neblett, and I wanted to do a short presentation regarding Fane Lozman, the Riviera Beach, and my experience in working with Mr. Lozman and attending the Supreme Court oral arguments. Fane Lozman and I go back some ways, as I assisted him and a number of vessel owners after Hurricane Wilma. Unfortunately, Mr. Lozman, who had a floating structure commonly known as a houseboat, and a number of other individuals had some serious problems for Hurricane Wilma. Vessel sunk, the marina was destroyed, etc., etc., etc. Mr. Lozman sought out my services along with a number of other vessel owners in a marina, and I was able to assist him with the landlord, the marina, and generally speaking, working with their insurance claims and problems that they were having at that time. As many of you know, the Lozman story, Fane Lozman is a political activist and has had quite a lot of run-ins with local governments and is very active and vocal about his opinions on various matters. Regarding Riviera Beach, Mr. Lozman actually moved his floating structure or houseboat from the site a little bit further south to Riviera Beach and had his floating structure docked there for some time. There was a project that was set up that was essentially going to take over some public, semi-public lands in the general marina area so that a boat builder could come in and there could be some other industry set up there. Mr. Lozman was a great opponent to this particular project and spoke at a number of city council and other local governmental meetings and agencies, etc. Basically, the local government there really didn't like what Mr. Lozman was doing. They were hoping to get the money to, change things around and redevelop that area. One of the things that they wanted to do, which they felt that they could put pressure on Mr. Lozman, was to essentially evict him from his slip at the local city-owned marina. Although Mr. Lozman had been paying rent or dockage there, essentially the city of Riviera refused to accept one of the checks, said that he had a rabid dog, which was a cute little funny kind of wiener dog, and attempted to evict him. I spoke with Mr. Lozman through some of this process, and although I provided some assistance to him, I did not formally represent him, but he basically represented himself against the city, and there was actually a trial where they tried to evict him. The case was tried to a jury, and Mr. Lozman was successful. Mr. Lozman was able to point out that, really the city didn't have any reason to evict him, and the issues that they had with him had to do with his opposition to this big plan and project. Very shortly after the eviction failed and the city had spent quite a lot of money regarding the eviction attempt, they put a maritime admiralty lien against his floating structure and moved forward with a vessel arrest, which is a procedure under maritime admiralty law. To do that, there obviously had to be some type of money that was due and owed, a lien that would be in effect, and Mr. Lozman's houseboat or floating structure would have to be considered a vessel. Mr. Lozman contacted me and we went through some of the policies and procedures regarding maritime admiralty law and some of the things that he could do. Mr. Lozman, with some of my assistance and the assistance of others, again represented himself, this time in federal court against the city. His federal case did not go as well as his state court case, and in federal court, the judge, a federal judge, found that it was in fact a vessel and that the lien applied to the vessel. The city of Riviera Beach actually bought Mr. Lozman's floating structure or houseboat very shortly after the judge's decision came down, and they spent exceptionally large amount of money regarding that litigation, but then they also purchased the houseboat or floating structure and had it destroyed. Mr. Lozman appealed that decision at the federal court level, and There's a little bit of procedure and history there, but the case ended up at the Supreme Court of the United States of America. As I was instrumental in assisting Mr. Lozman throughout the process and had talked to him and provided legal assistance for quite a number of years, and although I did not actually represent him at the Supreme Court level, I did go with Mr. Lozman to the Supreme Court to hear oral arguments, which was in October of 2012. It was quite an honor to be there with Mr. Lozman at the Supreme Court to listen to the oral argument and the justices discuss his case. As many of you then know, the Supreme Court overturned the federal judge's decision and found that Mr. Lozman's floating structure was just that. It was a floating structure and not a vessel. Mr. Lozman is now moving forward, continues to move forward with the city in attempts to recover some of the money, time, and expense, and also the problems that he had to deal with through initially this prosecution with the city, now that he has a court order from the Supreme Court. I'm glad to know Mr. Lozman, and I was very happy to be a part of this whole case and this whole issue.